So have a look at this coastline. We're in a place called Holderness in East Yorkshire, England. And while it might look pretty peaceful, what you're actually seeing is the front line of a huge, relentless battle between the land and the sea. In this explainer, we're going to dive into exactly why this coast is literally vanishing and, what happens when people try to stop it.
Okay, this is the number you need to remember. 2 meters. That is the average amount of land that gets eaten away by the sea here every single year. I mean, just picture the width of a car. Now imagine a strip of land that wide along the entire coast, just gone. It's one of the fastest, if not the fastest, rates of coastal erosion in all of Europe. And look, for the people who actually live here, this isn't some abstract statistic. It's everything. It's their farms, their houses, their livelihoods, their history, all just teetering on the edge, about to crumble into the North Sea. It makes the threat feel incredibly real.
Right, so let's get our bearings. The Holderness coast runs for about 61 kilometers. It starts up at the solid chalk cliffs of Flamborough Head and stretches all the way down to the sandy spit called Spurn Head. But here's the thing. Unlike its tough northern neighbor, most of this coast is incredibly weak, which is exactly why it's earned that unfortunate title.
So the big question is, why here? What is it about this specific piece of land that makes it fall apart so quickly? Well, to get that, we need to look at 2 things: what the coast is actually made of and what the sea is throwing at it. It's this wild combination of weak geology and just raw natural power.
And this right here is the absolute heart of the problem. Up north, you've got Flamborough Head, made of hard, resistant chalk. It can take a beating from the waves. But the Holderness coast, it's made of something called boulder clay. It's basically the soft, crumbly junk left behind by glaciers during the last ice age. Honestly, it's the difference between trying to wash away concrete and trying to wash away a pile of wet sand.
And that super weak clay just gets absolutely pummeled. You see, the North Sea has what's known as a long fetch, which is just a fancy way of saying the waves have a really long, uninterrupted distance to build up power before they smash into the coast. They crash into the cliffs, forcing air into tiny cracks, a process called hydraulic action, and they also pick up sand and pebbles and just hurl them at the cliff face. It doesn't take long for the clay to get totally saturated with water, and then...
Now all that stuff that crumbles off the cliffs has to end up somewhere, right? This is where a process called longshore drift becomes super important to our story. See, the waves usually hit the beach at a slight angle, which pushes sand and sediment along the coast. The result is this slow-moving river of sand constantly flowing south. You can really think of it as a natural coastal conveyor belt, just moving material down the line.
And this is where the story really takes a turn. Because of course, people live on this disappearing coastline. And when your town, your home, your main road is about to literally fall off a cliff, you don't just sit there and watch it happen. You try to do something. You fight back.
So let's zoom in on one specific spot, the village of Mapleton. Back in the early 1990s, the sea was getting terrifyingly close. We're talking people's homes and a really important coastal road were just a few meters from the edge. The threat wasn't a someday problem, it was an any day now problem. A decision had to be made, and fast. So, they fought back hard. They used what's called hard engineering. They built 2 enormous rock groins. These are basically giant walls that stick right out into the sea. Their job is to trap sand and build up the beach. Then, they piled up tons of massive boulders at the bottom of the cliff to act as armor, absorbing the wave's energy. And you know what? For Mapleton, it was a huge success. The erosion basically stopped. But remember that coastal conveyor belt we talked about? Well, by stopping the sand from moving at Mapleton, they'd accidentally switched the whole system off. The sand supply for everywhere south of them was cut, and by solving their problem, they created a huge new one for their neighbors just down the coast.
It set off this crazy chain reaction. The groins at Mapleton did their job perfectly. They trapped the sand, built up a nice wide beach, and the village was safe. But that meant the conveyor belt was now running empty. So the coast just south of there was completely starved of the new sand it needed for its own natural protection. The result? The erosion there, at places like Cowden Farm, actually got way, way worse.
And really, this one sentence says it all. A coastline isn't just a bunch of separate places. It's one big, interconnected system. Geographers call it a sediment cell. And what this story shows us is that anything you do in one spot is going to have a knock-on effect somewhere else. Mapleton's victory was, without a doubt, Cowden Farm's loss.
This whole case study really forces us to confront some incredibly tough questions. I mean, how are you supposed to manage an entire coastline when protecting one town might mean destroying another? It is a massive challenge, and there are absolutely no easy answers.
So this leads us to the two main ways of thinking about this. On one side, you've got hard engineering, like the seawalls and groins at Mapleton. They're expensive, they can be really effective for one specific place, but they often have big environmental consequences. Then on the other side, you have soft engineering. This includes things like managed retreat, where you basically accept that you can't save everywhere and strategically allow nature to reclaim less developed areas. It's generally cheaper and more sustainable, but it means you have to be okay with losing some land.
And this is the debate that local authorities are stuck in the middle of. Do you spend millions of pounds to protect property and roads, even though you know it might just make the problem worse down the coast? Or do you try to work with nature, even if it means sacrificing farms, homes, and history to the sea? It's this fundamental clash between protecting the economy, protecting people, and protecting the environment.
And that's really the question the Holderness Coast leaves all of us with. It's a local problem for sure, but with sea levels rising around the world, it has global implications. It forces us to think about our entire relationship with the natural world and decide where, literally, we're going to draw our line in the sand. What is worth saving and what is the true cost of trying to save it?